Welcome to East After People's TV. We're at the Queen Street Community Centre in Burton, and for another interview on East After People's TV we've got Chris Williamson, who's here, the former Labour MP for Derby North. Chris, I suppose it would be wrong not to start this interview without a quick mention of what happened yesterday in Brussels, a terrible attack.
It was truly shocking, and obviously my heart goes out to all of the victims and the families of the people who have been affected, and of course we should pay tribute to the emergency services who do such a difficult job in very trying circumstances, and they should be recognised in these situations as well. But we, I think, need to also look and think, how is it that people can be radicalised to such an extent that they can commit these atrocities? And I think that's where we need to be focusing a lot of our attention, to try to prevent the radicalisation from taking place in the first place, and that means working much better with local communities and finding ways of ensuring that these sorts of appalling, terrible, tragic incidents don't happen again in the future.
So tackling the ideas is the main thing.
I think so, absolutely, and we've got to win the battle of ideas. I mean, they have utterly a repugnant ideology, which is absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Islam. If you look at the Quran, it's very, very clear that it is a peaceful religion and deprecates violence towards people. So, these people are very much perverting the teachings of Islam, and I think it's really important that we keep that to the forefront of our minds as well.
Moving on to domestic matters and politics, last week we had the budget. It's emerged now that there's now going to be a £4 billion black hole because of the reverse Labour disability cuts. George Osbourne said quite before Christmas, we're the builders, he's fixing the roof, but he's nothing more than a cowboy now.
He is a cowboy, and the agenda that he has been pursuing has been a complete disaster. It hasn't worked even under his terms. All of the measures that he set himself to reduce the debt, to maintain the AAA credit rating for the nation, to eradicate the deficit, is singularly failed. The jobs that have been created, and they trumpet this, that they've created lots of jobs. Many of those jobs that have been created, however, are very low paid, and you only have to look to the productivity of the United Kingdom to give the lie to the notion that somehow they're stewarding the economy well, because productivity in Britain is amongst the lowest in Europe. And for example, in France, the French workers can create what we create in 5 days, they can create in just 4 days. So there is a real issue around productivity, and the whole austerity agenda has simply been a confidence trick, and I think people are beginning to see through that now, and this omnishambles of a budget, I think, is a good example of that.
So is it, in your opinion, and it certainly seems to be a growing opinion amongst the MPs, that Osborne has got to go?
Well, I think he's going to struggle to survive, but more importantly, it's the ideology and the policies that they are pursuing. That's the issue. I mean, you can change the furniture around, but fundamentally we need to move house, really. We need a change in government and a completely different approach. The approach, I think, that John McDonnell has outlined in his economic prospectus, one which is actually backed by some of the world's leading economists, and we've got to actually start making the economy work for ordinary people. At the moment it's only working for the top 0.1%. We've created more billionaires than any time in our history, ever since the crash in 2008 in the United Kingdom. So clearly we need to find a way of generating good quality, secure jobs for people. This is the 5th biggest economy, let's remember, in the world. And the problem is that we don't organise the economy properly. We need to democratise the economy. We need a better distribution of the wealth and income in the economy, so that everybody can get a piece of the action.
Moving on to the Labour Party, there's been some allegations. There seems to be a growing number of allegations of anti-Semitism within the party. Is it a problem, or is it isolated?
Well, I've never come across it, and I know that some of the people who have been subject to these accusations, I have to say it's nothing more than a smear. I'm not saying that anti-Semitism doesn't exist or has never existed, and where it does exist we need to root it out, as we need to root out any form of racism or bigotry. It certainly has no place in the Labour Party at all. But I have to say that the people who have been accused, some of them anyway, I know personally, and I absolutely know for absolutely certain that they are about as far from being anti-Semitic as it's possible to be.
I suppose we have to make a distinction and say it's wrong to be anti-Semitic, but it's not wrong to criticise the actions of the Israeli government.
No, that's right, and I think, to be honest with you, some people are getting those two things confused. I mean, I've been not exactly accused of anti-Semitism, but bordering on that for having the temerity to criticise some of the actions of the Israeli Defence Forces and you know, some of the appalling atrocities that they committed against the Palestinian people. And you know, we've got to, I think, stand up to the Israeli government. And it's interesting because one of the most outspoken critics of the Israeli regime is Gerald Kaufman in the House of Commons, who is a practicing Jew, goes to the synagogue every week, and is one of the most passionate supporters of the Palestinian cause that I've ever come across. So this absolutely, you know, is nothing to do with anti-Semitism to criticise the Israeli government and to call for the recognition of a Palestinian state. I think it's wrong and mischievous for some to try and deliberately conflate those two issues, because I think you know, it's simply a red herring.
We've seen today an emergence of a list of MPs that are loyal or not loyal or hostile to Corbyn's leadership. Is this has this come from the Labour Party, do you think, or is it a smear?
Well, I don't know about whether it's a smear or whether it's a dirty trick. It has all the hallmarks of a Linton Crosby dirty trick to me. I mean, clearly in any political party we'll have some people who are more supportive of the leadership than others, and it's no secret that Jeremy's had some difficulties with the parliamentary Labour Party, but I have to say, in my experience of 40 years as a party member, I've never known the Labour Party to be more united. And let's remember that the Parliamentary Labour Party is an important part of the party, but it is a very tiny proportion of the party. We have around 400,000 members of the Labour Party now, and growing, and the vast majority of them have been enthused by the policy agenda that Jeremy put forward, that won him the leadership so overwhelmingly. You know, I just think I mean, frankly, you know, silly Westminster bubble stories like this are for the birds, and I think we should simply ignore them. What is more important is actually making the case that Jeremy and John McDonnell and the Labour leadership team are doing for a fairer economy that works for ordinary people, an education system that works for everybody in the nation, to oppose the forced academisation, to abolish the tuition fees so people aren't penalised for getting a higher education, and to invest in our economy and make it work for ordinary people, to clamp down on tax evasion, to invest in the green economy, to create those green jobs that we need, to tackle climate change. These are the kind of key issues that are, you know, a matter of significant importance to the wider general public in terms of their quality of life and future opportunities. Then, you know, some silly list that has been produced. It might create, you know, a headline and get the chattering classes in the media, a few moments of mischief making, but in reality it's meaningless, to be honest with you, and I think we should ignore it.
Finally, European Union, are you in or out?
Well, I'm in. I mean, in 1975, it was my first dalliance with the ballot. Oh, no, it wasn't a big one, it was a second. I did actually vote in the 1974 general election. My second time into the ballot box, and I did actually vote to leave at that point in time. But now I think we should stay in the European Union. I think the stakes are far too high for us to come out. Having said that, however, it's not a blank cheque. What I would be certainly arguing for is a reformed Europe, but a reformed Europe, not the one that David Cameron and the Tories want to see, but one where, you know, we see more of a social Europe. For example, I'd like to see, you know, the European partners cooperating on having a EU-wide corporation tax level, for example, to stop this, you know, tax tourism which goes on inside the European Union. I think we need to work together, for example, on employment rights, on employment protection. I think we need to work together on consumer protection and on tackling environmental problems. I think that's done far better if we do that in concert. So I'm in, but not with a blank cheque. I very much support Yanis Varoufakis's Democracy in Europe movement. I mean, and he is one of the most strident critics of the European Union at the moment, but he too believes that we should remain part of the European Union. But he is calling for the democratisation of the European Union to greater transparency, so that it genuinely serves the interests of ordinary people and works in the interests of ordinary people. At the moment it's far too much of a capitalist club, and it should be a club which actually is for the benefit of the citizens of Europe rather than the rich 0.1%.
Chris Williamson, thanks for coming back on, and hope it's not the last time.
Thank you.